The Night the Lights Came, the Trilogy, by Lily Moon. The sky is watching. Reality is not what it seems. Leecy vanished once and returned to a world that felt wrong. Too perfect, too quiet, too controlled. But the red lights in the night sky were only the beginning. Memories leak, minds awaken, and somewhere the architects of existence are watching every move. In this mind-bending cosmic horror trilogy, the line between real and constructed, self and other, life and simulation collapses. Every truth is a lie, every escape a trap, and the stars above may be the last things you can trust. Dare to look, dare to remember, dare to survive. The Night the Lights Came. Chapter 1, The Lights. I sat alone on the porch, watching the sky like it owed me something. It had been 3 nights since the lights started appearing. Always the same, red, hovering in a line like silent sentinels before vanishing at impossible speed. Everyone in town had seen them, neighbors, coworkers, even Matt. I'd only caught the tail end of a streak once, but that wasn't enough. I needed to see it. I needed proof. So tonight I waited. The air was heavy with late summer stillness. Cicadas hummed lazily in the trees, and the scent of cut grass clung to everything. The house behind me, our house, was quiet. It looked like home, but something felt rearranged inside. Like furniture had been nudged just slightly off its usual marks. I set the camera on the porch railing, pointed toward the northern sky, and hit record. It gave off a faint mechanical whir as the lens focused. I adjusted the tripod, stepped back, and lowered myself onto the top step. The moment I sat, the lights appeared. 5 red dots blinked into view, unmoving. My breath caught in my chest. They weren't planes, they weren't stars. They held a stillness that felt deliberate, watched. Then they shattered apart like breaking glass, zipping overhead in a scatter formation that moved faster than anything should. If I'd blinked, I would have missed it. I saw them that time, I whispered. That's when the light came, white, consuming. Like standing inside a sunbeam turned solid. It didn't just blind me, it entered me, wrapped itself around my lungs, pressed behind my eyes. The porch vanished, the sky, the ground, my skin. I was nowhere, and not alone. Chapter 2, Untethered. I couldn't move, not even the tiniest twitch of a finger or blink of an eye. I wasn't sure if I still had eyes. My body was a vague suggestion, an echo of shape without weight. I was untethered, yet suspended, like thought floating in syrup. Sound came next, muffled voices, layered and out of sync, speaking in tones that made my ears want to fold in on themselves. No language I knew, but the rhythm felt intentional. A call and response, question, answer, command. Then the metallic noises began, low vibrating clangs like steel under pressure, followed by the wet clink of glass or ceramic. Beeping tones pulsed at odd intervals, sharp and sterile. I tried to scream, to move, to be. Nothing. Only the thunder of my heartbeat, if it even was mine. It felt distant, foreign, like someone else was thudding inside my ribs. I began to panic. Not a normal panic, not the kind that frays your nerves and makes your limbs shake. This was deeper, primal, a suffocating terror that felt like drowning in thought. I flailed mentally, psychically, spiritually. My will surged outward, screaming against invisible walls. And something responded. Not in words, but in pressure. Something pressed back. And then, release. Chapter 3, Back on the Porch. I blinked, or maybe the world blinked me. Suddenly, I was back on the porch. Morning light spilled over the yard like nothing had happened. Birds chirped, a truck rumbled in the distance. My skin was damp with dew. My joints ached, and there was a blanket on my lap. I hadn't brought it out. Leecy? Matt's voice, from behind me. I turned my head too fast and the world tilted. He stood in the doorway, brow furrowed. Were you asleep out here? I opened my mouth, but the words wouldn't come. My throat was dry, raw, my vision swam. His face was blurry, edges hazy like I was underwater. Help! I croaked. My voice was a stranger's. Matt took a cautious step forward. You okay? You were kicking, swinging. I tried to wake you up earlier, but you were yelling at me, said no over and over. He paused, his voice colder now. I told you if you started that again, I'd go back inside. No, I rasped. Please help me. My legs barely worked. My whole body trembled, unresponsive and sluggish, like I'd been dropped back into it from somewhere else. He took my arm, helped me to my feet. I stumbled inside, leaning hard on the pillar in the living room before collapsing onto the couch. Matt looked calm, too calm, like this had happened before. "I've been out there since last night," I managed. He glanced over his shoulder, squinting slightly. "Since last night?" He turned, walked back outside to grab the blanket. I stared after him. "That blanket. Chapter 4, the blanket." Matt came back inside with the blanket folded neatly in his arms, too neatly. He laid it across the back of the couch like it was just another morning, like I hadn't just told him I'd been missing all night. "I've been out there since last night," I said again, louder this time, desperate. He paused for half a second, then nodded, slow and thoughtful, like he was mentally filing the information away under things that are not a problem. He didn't ask why I hadn't come in, didn't ask what I saw, didn't ask about the lights, just gave me a faint smile. "You should rest." Rest? My heart was trying to beat its way out of my ribcage. I wanted to throw the blanket across the room and scream, but I didn't have the strength. Instead, I waited until he disappeared into the kitchen and dragged myself over to the camera. It was still on the porch, exactly where I'd left it. Only it wasn't recording. Or maybe it had been, and someone stopped it. I brought it inside and plugged it into my laptop. It powered on instantly, battery fully charged. I opened the file folder. Empty, no videos, no clips, nothing from last night. Except one file, 10 seconds long, no sound. Time-stamped 3 hours before I even sat down on the porch. I clicked it. The footage showed the porch, still, silent, unmoving. And the blanket, already there. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. There was no other file, no sign I'd ever touched the camera. I looked over my shoulder toward the couch. The blanket hadn't moved. Chapter 5, Floating Dreams. That night, I dreamed I was floating again. Only this time, I knew it was a dream. I could feel the seams in the world, hear the hum of something electric and alive behind it, like I was inside a simulation being rebooted. I saw Matt standing in the kitchen, back turned. He was talking to someone, but there was no one else there. "No, she hasn't told me yet," he said calmly, "but she remembers more this time." He paused, then turned slightly, just enough for me to see the side of his face. It wasn't his. His jaw was too sharp, his eye socket was too deep, his smile was wider. And then he looked straight at me, right through the dream. I woke up gasping. Matt wasn't in bed. I didn't tell Matt about the dream. I didn't tell him that I'd seen him talking to no one. That his face had shifted in ways the human face shouldn't. That he'd looked at me, into me from inside my own subconscious. Instead, I started watching him. At first, I thought I was being paranoid, sleep-deprived, traumatized by whatever had happened or hadn't happened on the porch, but the longer I watched, the more I noticed. Matt's routines were too perfect, his footsteps too quiet, his movements too smoothed out, like someone had practiced being him, studied him. I would say something simple like, "Did you water the plants?" And he'd smile just a little too slowly and say, "Of course, I always do," even if I knew he hadn't. He never asked me how I was feeling, he never mentioned the night I disappeared, and he never questioned the blanket. I started testing things, little things. I moved a book he always kept on the coffee table, just slightly, just enough to matter. He moved it back, I unplugged the toaster while he was out. The next morning, he used it like nothing had changed. I put my coffee mug in the freezer before bed. It was clean and back in the cabinet by morning. The world was resetting itself. I could feel it, like my life had been copied and pasted, but pasted wrong. The edges were jagged, the continuity off. Chapter 6, The Return of the Lights. 3 nights later, I stood on the porch again. Same camera, same railing, same uneasy silence. I didn't set it to record this time. I just held it in my hands and waited. The lights returned, 4 red points, evenly spaced. They blinked into existence like they'd been watching and waiting for me to come back. I didn't blink. I didn't speak. I just watched them. This time, they didn't scatter. They stayed in place, hovering, humming, and then they tilted, slightly, almost as if nodding, acknowledging me or recognizing me. I stepped back. Something inside the house laughed. It wasn't Matt. It wasn't me. It was low and static and wrong, a sound that fizzed at the edges of hearing like a corrupted file. When I turned, the blanket was waiting on the porch swing, folded, neat, expectant. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Something wasn't right. Something wasn't right about Matt, about the house, about the whole world around me. I could feel it now like an itch deep under my skin, a wrongness I couldn't scrub out, no matter how hard I tried. The blanket on the porch swung back and forth in the faint breeze. It was waiting for me. It always was. It never left. I approached it slowly, cautiously, like it was a trap. The fabric shimmered in the moonlight, its folds shifting as if alive, though it remained perfectly still. I hesitated, then grabbed it. The moment my fingers brushed the fabric, my vision warped. A sudden sharp pain shot through my temple, and for a split second, everything skipped, like a broken record. The world flashed forward and backward faster than I could process. Then a sharp tug pulled me toward the porch railing. I felt a familiar sensation, a pulling force. But this time it wasn't an invisible grip. This time it was me being pulled across time and space. Not just body, but my mind and memories too. I felt myself leaving. Not just the porch, not just the house, but everything. Chapter 7, The Truth. Leecy? Matt's voice came from the doorway, strained. The wrongness in his tone pierced through the distortion. I didn't turn to face him. I couldn't, but I could hear him clearly, and I could feel his eyes on me, even if his face was a blurred figure in the distance. I tried to speak, but my words felt stuck in my throat. "You shouldn't have touched it," Matt said, his voice flat, distant. "You shouldn't have gone looking for it." The blanket, the thing that seemed to weave itself into the fabric of my world, the one that never belonged. The truth hit me in a flash, a terrible clarity, like being woken from a nightmare just as the darkest part begins. There had never been a Matt. There had never been a house. None of it was real. Everything, the lights, the blanket, the feelings of being outside my body, all of it was constructed. I was never meant to wake up, but somehow I had. And now that I had, I couldn't go back. The room around me flickered like a malfunctioning hologram. It stretched and contracted, bending the laws of reality in ways that were impossible to ignore. My senses snapped and popped like electric wires going haywire. I lunged toward the door, scrambling away from the porch. I could hear him, the thing that was pretending to be Matt, walking toward me, its footsteps unnatural, stiff. I pushed harder, but every step was a struggle. Every movement, slow. When I reached the door, it wouldn't open. It was locked. Of course it was. "No," I breathed, yanking at the handle. "Let me out, please." The voice that responded wasn't Matt's. It was distorted, a low mechanical tone that sounded like several voices layered on top of each other, speaking in perfect unison. "You are not supposed to be here." I felt the world pull again, the fabric of reality tearing and twisting around me. The porch melted away. The blanket unraveled like it was dissolving into the air. The thing behind me stepped closer. It felt too close, like it was inside me, just out of sight. I could feel its presence pressing against the edges of my mind, tugging at the corners of my consciousness. I slammed myself against the door again. Desperation surged through me, a final frantic burst of strength. This time, it opened. The air outside was thick with a strange hum, the lights overhead flashing in rapid patterns, almost like they were speaking. I didn't hesitate. I ran, stumbling out of the house, toward the street, toward the one thing that might save me, reality itself. But the world kept shifting. The streetlights flickered in and out. The ground beneath my feet wobbled like a mirage. The grass, the pavement, the trees all blurred together as if they didn't belong. I wasn't running in the world anymore. I was running through it. I don't know how long I ran. The town became a blur of shifting shapes. The sky above stretched and collapsed, the stars flickering like malfunctioning pixels. I could still hear it, the thing behind me, the one pretending to be Matt, the one that knew I was trying to escape. "You can't leave," it called, distorted, overlapping itself. "You're already gone." I fell, but I didn't land on the ground. I landed in nothing, and then there was silence. I don't know how much time passed, how much of this is real, but I woke up again. This time, it wasn't the porch, it wasn't the house. It wasn't even me. The last thing I remember is the blanket that never left. To be continued. Book 2, The Ones Who Remember. Leecy wakes up inside a sprawling underground facility where hundreds of human consciousnesses are being studied, replicated, and rewritten. The lights were not extraterrestrial visitors. They were data harvesters, scanning human neural patterns to build perfect simulations of life on Earth. But something went wrong. Leecy's consciousness fractured between realities. One body escaped, the other stayed behind. Now she must navigate a shifting labyrinth of synthetic worlds, corrupted memories, and versions of herself that may or may not want her dead. Chapter 1. static in my blood. I woke up choking on light, not sunlight, something harsher, artificial. A white so bright it carved everything into outlines. My eyes burned as they adjusted, and when they finally focused, I realized I was lying on a narrow cot in the middle of a room that hummed like an engine. The air smelled like metal and rain. Every sound echoed, bouncing off sterile walls that seemed too smooth, too seamless. There were no seams, no screws, no doors, just a single pane of glass in front of me, stretching floor to ceiling. And behind it, rows of others. Men, women, children, all lying on identical cots bathed in the same cruel light. Their chests rose and fell in mechanical rhythm, sleeping but not peaceful. Some twitched, some mouthed silent words. One, a woman who looked uncannily like my old neighbor, Mrs. Halpern, had tears streaming down her still face. I sat up slowly. My limbs felt weak, like they'd been drained and recharged by someone who didn't quite understand how bodies worked. My reflection stared back at me in the glass, only it didn't move when I did. I froze. The woman in the reflection blinked, tilted her head, smiled faintly, and then went still again, like she was waiting. The hum in the air deepened, a low vibration, pulsing through the floor. The walls rippled faintly, as if the whole room were breathing. Then, through hidden speakers, came a voice, flat, mechanical, and horribly familiar. "Welcome back, Leecy." I turned in a slow circle, heart hammering. "Where am I? What is this?" "You are not supposed to remember." The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It vibrated in my bones. I pressed my palms against the walls, searching for a door, a seam, anything. But the surface was smooth, unbroken. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Remember what?" The lights dimmed, and in the glass, the woman, myself, opened her eyes. Not the same color anymore. Silver, empty. She raised her hand, pressed it against the glass. I didn't move, but my reflection did. "You were never meant to wake up," she said. My voice, but stripped of everything human. "Not here, not again." Then the world shuddered, the lights flickered, and the glass between us began to melt. Chapter 2. The duplicate, the siren came first, a high, piercing tone that made the room vibrate. I staggered back as the glass warped and ran like water, reforming into mist that scattered across the floor. My other self stepped through it, bare feet, same clothes, same face. But her movements were precise, calculated, like she was moving on pre-programmed code. I wanted to run. I couldn't, my legs wouldn't obey. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "You broke containment." My voice cracked. "I don't know what that means." "You will." She tilted her head. "You already do." Behind her, the sleeping bodies began to twitch in unison, hundreds of them, their fingers flexing, their mouths opening in silent gasps. One by one, their eyes snapped open, every single one glowing the same impossible silver. The other me turned toward them and said, "Wake cycle, alpha sequence." Then she looked back at me. Run. Chapter 3. The corridor that wasn't. The wall behind me hissed and split open into a narrow corridor of shifting metal. I stumbled into it, lungs burning, the hum of the facility growing louder. The floor wasn't solid. It rippled underfoot, adjusting to each step like walking on a living thing. Somewhere behind me, alarms howled. Somewhere ahead, I heard voices. Human ones this time. Panic, shouting, running feet. As I turned a corner, I slammed into someone, a man in a tattered lab coat, face pale and wild-eyed. He grabbed my wrist. "You!" He blinked hard as if not believing what he saw. "You're one of them. You shouldn't be awake." "Where am I?" I gasped. "What is this place?" He looked around frantically. "They'll see you if you stay in the open. Come on." He dragged me through another corridor, this one dimly lit by red strobes flashing in rhythmic pulses. Through glass panels on either side, I caught glimpses of massive machinery, pulsing with blue light, giant conduits that looked like veins. Finally, he shoved open a steel hatch and pushed me inside a cramped maintenance tunnel. He shut it behind us, then leaned back against the wall, breathing hard. "I'm Dr. Renner," he said. "You've been offline for 12 cycles." "I'm not," I stopped. "What do you mean, offline? I'm a person." He looked at me with something between pity and awe. "No," he said quietly. "You're what's left of one." Chapter 4. What's left of one. The air in the tunnel was thick and metallic. Each breath felt like inhaling static. My hands were trembling so hard I had to press them against my knees just to keep still. Renner was watching me, not like a person studies another person, like a scientist studies a malfunctioning specimen. "What do you mean what's left of one?" I demanded, my voice rough. "What am I?" He hesitated. His eyes darted to the far end of the tunnel, where faint mechanical thuds echoed, growing louder. He leaned in close. "You were a volunteer once," he whispered. "Or maybe a prisoner. No one remembers anymore." The project began as a way to preserve consciousness after physical death. A digital consciousness migration. But something went wrong, badly wrong. The floor beneath us thrummed with energy, a slow vibration pulsing like a heartbeat. Renner continued, voice low and urgent. The first subjects woke up confused, fragmented. They thought they were still human, but the code degraded, personalities overlapped, copies multiplied, some became aware. He met my gaze. "You're one of the few who woke up twice." "Twice?" He nodded. "You broke the loop once before, escaped the simulation layer, but your consciousness couldn't fully stabilize outside of it. The system brought you back. That's why the others are hunting you." "The others?" I repeated softly. "The ones in the glass rooms?" Renner's mouth tightened. "They're the sleepers, copies of copies, failed versions waiting to be overwritten." "Then who's controlling them?" He hesitated, then, "The ones who remember." The words hit me like static in the chest. "Who are they?" Renner shook his head. "You don't want to know. Come on, this way." Chapter 5, Echo Room. We crawled through the maintenance tunnel until it opened into a dark chamber filled with tangled cables and dimly glowing screens. The air here buzzed with a low, electronic hum that made my teeth ache. Renner flicked on a small handheld lamp. The light revealed hundreds of old computer terminals stacked like tombstones, all displaying fragments of faces, smiling, crying, screaming, looping endlessly in short, broken videos. Every few seconds, the faces glitched and reset. "What is this place?" I whispered. "The Echo Room," Renner said quietly. "Backup consciousness, memories that couldn't be contained in the primary net. They collect here, repeating themselves until they fade out completely." I moved closer to one of the terminals. On the screen, a woman was sitting on a porch. My porch! She looked straight at the camera, her eyes wide, her mouth moving, but no sound came out. Renner stepped beside me, watching carefully. "Every recovered memory file starts the same way," he said. "The night the lights came, it's the ignition point, the first upload event." "That's me," I whispered. "That's when it happened." He nodded. "You were one of the first to experience it directly. You weren't abducted, Leecy. You were digitized, pulled out of your physical body and integrated into the system. That's why there's a version of you still sleeping in containment." I turned to face him. "Then why do I still feel real?" Renner's expression softened. "Because you are. Consciousness doesn't care about hardware. You still think, feel, suffer, that's real enough." The lights flickered overhead. Then a voice echoed through the room, cold, layered, familiar. "Renner, step away from the subject." Renner froze, his face drained of color. "No," he whispered. "Not yet." "Step away," the voice repeated. "You know the protocol for contamination." "Run," Renner hissed. "Go through the back conduit, now!" The screens exploded into static. The woman on the porch looked at me one last time, then smiled and whispered somehow through the noise. "They're coming." Chapter 6. Through the conduit. The conduit was a vertical shaft no wider than my shoulders. I climbed fast, slipping on slick metal rungs, the hum of machinery echoing up from below. Every few seconds, the walls around me seemed to flicker, solid, then not. My hands passed through the metal once, just for a moment, as if I wasn't entirely there. I heard voices below, mechanized, synchronized, moving closer. "Subject 117, breached containment, reactivation imminent." I kept climbing. The shaft ended at a narrow hatch. I shoved it open and tumbled out into a cavernous space that looked nothing like the sterile facility below. This place was organic. The walls pulsed faintly, covered in cables that looked disturbingly like veins. In the center stood a massive sphere of light, red pulsing in steady rhythm. It was the same color as the lights in the sky. I felt it before I understood it. Recognition, connection. The hum in the air matched the pulse in my chest, in my blood. Then the voice came again, but this time from inside my head. Welcome back, Origin host. I staggered backward, clutching my temples. No, that's not me. You are the source code, it said calmly. All simulations derive from your neural pattern. You remember because you were first. The red light flared, and within it, shapes began to move. Figures made of light and data, shifting faces forming and melting. All of them, me. You broke containment because your mind rejects replication, the voice continued. But the others, the ones who remember, they're waking now, and they want their reality back. The sphere pulsed again, brighter this time, so bright it split open like an eye. And behind it, I saw the stars, not in the sky, but inside the machine. Chapter 7. The Memory Harvest. Renner's voice crackled through an unseen speaker. Leecy, if you can hear me, you need to get out of there. That core isn't stable. It's collapsing. I spun around, searching for an exit, but the entire chamber had changed. The walls stretched outward, the cables unraveling into vast networks of light. Images flickered in the air around me. Memories, thousands of them. Matt laughing, the porch, the blanket, my mother's voice, a red sky, all of it merging, bleeding together. The voice in my head grew louder, overlapping with Renner's. You were the seed, the first human mind to survive transfer. They used you to build the architecture of memory itself. But memory corrupts, every simulation decays. The others want to escape, but there is nowhere left to go. The light pulsed faster. My heartbeat matched it. Then how do I stop it? I shouted. Silence. Then, you don't stop it. You choose which world to keep. The chamber erupted in blinding white light. Chapter 8, The Split. The light didn't just blind me, it split me. Every thought, every heartbeat fractured into infinite echoes. I wasn't standing in the chamber anymore. I was in 1,000 rooms at once. 1,000 versions of me, all looking up at the same red glow. One was screaming. One was crying. One was silent. One smiled. And through it all, a single phrase echoed, layered and relentless. Choose which world to keep. Stop, I shouted, though I wasn't sure if my voice came from my mouth or one of the others. I don't understand. A shape began forming inside the sphere, humanoid, shifting between light and shadow. The more I looked, the more I realized it was me again. Another Leecy, older, calmer, her expression unreadable. You built this, she said simply. The bridge between worlds. You wanted to save what was left of humanity, but they didn't tell you what the cost would be. I didn't build anything, I snapped. I don't even remember who I was. You do, she said, tilting her head. That's why you're dangerous. You remember too much. Behind her, the glowing figures, the ones who remember, began to stir. Their eyes flickered open one by one, 1,000 copies with different expressions but the same soul. I could feel them, their pain, their hunger, their confusion. They want freedom, my duplicate said, but freedom requires a mind to anchor it. If they all wake at once, the system collapses. Reality collapses. Then what happens if I choose wrong? I whispered. She smiled. You already did. The light flared again, and the chamber folded in on itself. Chapter 9. Glitchfield. I hit the ground hard. Grass, wind, the smell of dust and asphalt. For a brief, dizzying moment, I thought I was back home, back on Earth. The sky above was pale blue, clouds drifting lazily across the horizon. But then the sky flickered. The clouds froze. The horizon looped. I was standing in the middle of Route 66. Except it wasn't real. The signs repeated every mile. The road stretched forever, but went nowhere. I could see the same gas station again and again, copied and pasted like a broken simulation. And there, sitting on the hood of a rusted bus, was Matt. He looked up, grinning. You made it. My stomach dropped. You're not real. He shrugged. Neither are you. I wanted to run. I didn't. I needed answers. What are you? I demanded. What are we? He hopped off the bus, dusting off his jeans. His eyes flickered silver in the light. I'm your failsafe, he said. The system built me to keep you calm, but when you broke containment, they sent me to bring you back. Back where? Home, he said simply. Or what's left of it. He gestured to the horizon, to where the sky was splitting like torn fabric. Beyond it, I could see flashes of something else. The facility, the red sphere, the other versions of me screaming in silence. The ones who remember are trying to overwrite the world, Matt said. They want to wake up inside it, but they don't understand. There's nothing to wake up to. I stared at him. So, what do I do? He stepped closer. You choose which version survives. The human world, the one that's fading, or the simulation where everyone can still exist. I shook my head. That's not a choice. He smiled sadly. It's the only one you've got. Chapter 10. The Static Sea. That night, if it even was night, I walked until the road dissolved beneath me. The sky turned into static, then stars, then nothing at all. My footsteps left no sound. My body began to blur, the edges softening like smoke. The voice came back, low and insistent. Origin host, decision pending, stability declining. I can't choose, I whispered. If I destroy the simulation, everyone dies. If I keep it alive, they'll never wake up. They are already dead. The words hit like cold water. No, I said. No, they're alive. I saw them. Echoes, it said. Memories without anchors. Without you, they dissolve. Then maybe that's what they want, I said, to stop being trapped. Termination will erase all versions of consciousness, including yours. I hesitated, and then, faintly, almost like a ghost in the static, I heard her voice. My mother's. Leecy, sweetheart, it's time to come home. I closed my eyes and made the choice. Chapter 11. The Collapse. The world went quiet. Every sound, every hum, every flicker of data froze in place. The stars above burned bright white, then shattered like glass. Time folded inward. I saw every version of me, the duplicates, the sleepers, the silver-eyed echoes, all turning toward me at once. No fear, no anger, just understanding. One by one, they nodded, and then they began to fade. The red sphere cracked open, spilling light into the void. The simulation unraveled. I felt it peeling away from me like a second skin, layer after layer of false reality collapsing into pure energy. Matt's voice echoed faintly. You did it. You set them free. My body was gone. My mind was light. I was the pulse in the machine, the echo in the dark. And then, nothing. Epilogue. The blanket. The blanket smelled like rain. It was folded neatly on the porch swing, just like always. The morning sun spilled over the yard. A camera sat on the railing, pointed toward the sky. A woman stepped out of the house, blinking in the light. Her eyes were calm, her hands steady. She reached for the blanket, ran her fingers over the fabric, and smiled faintly. Behind her, a man's voice called out, "Coffee's ready." She turned. "Thanks, Matt." She looked out at the horizon. No red lights, no hum, just birds and blue sky. But when she blinked, her reflection in the porch window didn't blink back. It smiled. "Welcome home, Leecy. Book 3, The World That Forgot. The simulation restarted, the world forgot, but memory never dies." Prologue. The world began again on a Tuesday. No fire, no sound, just a soft pulse of light that rippled across the horizon like dawn learning how to breathe. People woke up in their beds, coffee brewed, traffic hummed, the sun rose, and no one remembered the red lights. No one remembered her. Somewhere in a quiet town that didn't exist the week before, a woman named Elise Carter sat on her porch with a cup of coffee. The morning air smelled like rain. She couldn't say why that made her uneasy. Her husband came out behind her, kissed her cheek, and said, "You've got that look again." "What look?" "The one that says you're waiting for something." She smiled because that was the right answer. But something in her chest stirred, like an echo she couldn't place. When she looked up, the sky flickered. Only once. So fast that anyone else would have missed it, but Elise didn't. For just a heartbeat, the world glitched. The clouds repeated, the trees shuddered like a looping video, and in that instant, the taste of electricity filled her mouth. A memory found, not hers, whispered in her head. "You shouldn't have touched it." The coffee slipped from her hand, shattering across the porch. She froze. Because the blanket on the porch swing wasn't hers, and it was folded perfectly. Chapter 1. The Edge of Remembering. Elise crouched on the porch, her hands slick with coffee and splintered wood. The morning sun was warm, lazy, as if it had nothing to do with the fracture she'd just seen. She blinked, shaking her head, trying to convince herself it was nothing. A trick of light, a shadow flickering across the lens of her eyes. But the blanket didn't lie. It sat on the porch swing, folded, pristine, and entirely out of place. She had no memory of it being there. And yet, a flicker of something deep inside her told her she knew it, that she should know it. Her husband, Daniel, appeared in the doorway, brushing crumbs from his shirt. "Elise?" You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I, I don't know, she whispered. Her voice sounded strange, low and cautious, like speaking might break the world around her. She stood slowly, moving toward the swing, and when her fingers grazed the blanket, the air shifted. The sun dimmed. Just for a second. It wasn't darkness, it was wrong. A sound buzzed faintly, barely perceptible, like the high-pitched whine of a computer struggling to process a command. Elise froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Somewhere buried beneath ordinary consciousness, a memory whispered, "Don't touch it." "Don't touch what?" Daniel asked, stepping closer. Elise didn't answer. She wanted to, but the words tangled in her throat. Instead, she stared at the blanket. The edges shimmered. The folds shifted ever so slightly, as though the fabric was breathing. And then she saw it, a flash, not in the air, but inside her mind. A porch she didn't recognize, a man who wasn't Daniel, a night full of red lights and white brilliance, and her own voice screaming, "No, please, help me!" Elise stumbled backward. The porch swung under her feet, groaning. Daniel grabbed her arm. "Hey, what?" She shook him off, her eyes fixed on the blanket. "It's not supposed to be here." He frowned. "What do you mean it's just a blanket, Elise?" "No," she said, her voice firmer now. "It's something else, something wrong, and I think it's remembering me." Daniel stepped back, confusion and concern warring across his face. But before he could speak, the sky above flickered. A line of red dots, impossibly bright, appeared across the horizon for a heartbeat before vanishing. Elise's stomach turned. She whispered a single word, "Again." The blanket shifted, ever so slightly in response. And in that moment, she understood. The world had restarted, but the restart was never complete. Something inside it, something she couldn't fully control or understand, was beginning to remember. Something was coming back, something that should have stayed forgotten. Chapter 2, Fractures in the Everyday. Elise spent the rest of the evening in a daze. She walked through her real life like a ghost, half present, half tethered to a memory that didn't belong here. The sun was too bright, the grass too green, the air too clean. Everything had that faintly off hum that she had learned to recognize, like the world was trying to imitate itself perfectly, but always failing. The first fracture came in the coffee shop. She was in line, staring at the polished wood counter when the barista blinked wrong. Too long, too deliberate. Her name badge didn't say Melissa as it should. It read Melissa with 2 L's, the letters slightly misaligned, as if typed by a trembling hand. Elise froze. Can I help you?" the barista asked. Her voice was slightly slowed, like someone had inserted a pause mid-syllable. Elise shook her head, stumbled over her words. I think I was here before." The barista's eyes widened. There was recognition, not polite social recognition, real recognition. Her lips twitched as if forming words Elise should hear but couldn't. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded once. Elise left the shop without her coffee. Outside, she leaned against the curb, heart hammering. This wasn't a glitch. Someone else remembered. Someone else knew that something was wrong. The memories came faster after that. Flashbacks of the porch, the red lights, the blanket. Matt, or whatever, had been wearing his face. Leaning closer, whispering that she shouldn't have touched it. The simulation she had woken from was alive, sprawling, and layered beneath this reality, bleeding through in fragments. She started keeping a journal, writing down everything she remembered. Details about the night the lights came. About the things Matt, or the thing, had done. About the feeling of being unmade and stitched back together in a world that wasn't hers. Each note she wrote made her skin tingle, as if the act of recording memory was a small rebellion against the system trying to overwrite her. That night, Elise dreamt. But this time, it wasn't just her. Voices whispered in the dark, layered and distinct, women, men, children, all murmuring fragments she recognized. Red lights, blanket, don't touch, wake up, she remembers. The voices weren't speaking to her. They were speaking to each other in a network that stretched across some hidden plane, stitched into the seams of the simulation itself. One voice rose above the rest. Clear, calm, impossibly familiar. We remember. Elise woke gasping. The blanket was on her bed. Not folded neatly, crumpled, almost restless. Something was moving inside it. Something alive. The next morning, she noticed subtle signs everywhere. Her neighbor, Mr. Carmichael, dropped his newspaper and muttered something about seeing the lights again, but quickly shook his head and pretended to adjust the fence. On the bus, a teenager tapped her shoulder and whispered, "It's not right, is it?" before vanishing into the crowd. Elise realized the terrifying truth. She wasn't alone. There were others, people who had remembered, who were beginning to awaken to the edges of the simulation, and the simulation knew it. Every flicker, every misaligned shadow, every odd pause in conversation was a warning, a monitoring system reacting to the awakening of its subjects. Elise clenched her fists. The blanket wasn't just a relic, it was a key, a signal, a thread connecting her to the network of those who remembered, and if she could follow it, she could find them. But she knew, deep in her bones, that the simulation would not let her. It would fight, it would reshape, it would erase anyone who stepped too close to the truth. The red lights would come again. The blanket would wait, and this time, Elise would not be alone. Chapter 3, The Network. The blanket hadn't moved all night, or maybe it had, and she'd simply stopped noticing what counted as movement. When Elise woke, dawn had no color, just light, too even, too uniform. A world rendered rather than born. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the blanket's folds. Every few seconds, it pulsed, like fabric breathing. She forced herself to touch it. The instant her fingers brushed the weave, her vision jittered. Images overlaid on top of reality like double exposure photographs. Faces, dozens of them, all whispering fragments of lives that weren't supposed to intersect. A woman sitting at a roadside diner that no longer existed. A man screaming under a red sky. A child holding a toy shaped like a satellite. They were all speaking the same word. Remember, the surge broke, leaving her gasping. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. She shouldn't have answered, but something in her gut said it wasn't random. Elise? The voice was low, rough, and shaky. If you can hear me, you saw them too, right? The lights? Elise froze. Who is this? My name's Jonah. I used to live in Portland before they moved me here. Her pulse quickened. You mean the relocation program? No, he said. The reset. There was silence, just long enough for Elise to realize the call wasn't using any service provider. No bars, no signal. The call was coming through something else. Listen, Jonah said quickly. There are others. We've been piecing it together. Every time someone wakes up, the system tries to isolate them, rewrite their surroundings. But the memory leak, it's getting stronger. You've felt it, haven't you? Elise swallowed hard. Yes. Then you have to find the signal. It shows up on analog frequencies, static that hums in patterns of fives. If you can hear it, you can reach the network. The call snapped dead. Static filled the room, not from the phone, but from everywhere. The walls hissed, the lights flickered, the floor vibrated with faint electrical rhythm. 5 pulses. Pause. 5 pulses. Pause. Elise grabbed her small emergency radio, the kind she hadn't used since college. She turned the dial until the signal caught, white noise modulating into tones that formed something like a heartbeat. Then, through the static, a voice emerged, layered and distant. We are awake. The architecture is weakening. Find the intersections. The words weren't heard so much as felt, pressing against the base of her skull. Elise staggered back. The blanket shifted again as if responding to the signal. She suddenly understood it wasn't just a keepsake from another life. It was a transmitter, a residue of whatever lay between worlds. She whispered into the static, "Where are you?" The radio screamed, a metallic shriek that turned the air to glass, and then, through the distortion, came 3 coordinates. Real places, different cities, people like her, waiting. The hum cut out, the blanket fell still. Elise stood alone in the silence, heart pounding. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something else. Purpose. But as she packed a small bag, a shadow crossed her reflection in the mirror. For the briefest moment, it wasn't her face looking back. It was Matt's, smiling, waiting, and behind that smile, 1,000 eyes blinked open. Chapter 4, The Intersections. The drive was longer than it should have been. Elise didn't know why exactly. Roads folded over themselves, familiar street signs flickering and glitching like corrupted data. Every time she blinked, a house disappeared, replaced by a new one that seemed more right, but she knew it wasn't. She gripped the steering wheel, listening to the hum of the blanket in the passenger seat. 5 pulses. Pause. 5 pulses. Pause. She traced the rhythm with her fingers, feeling it resonate in her chest, aligning with something deep in her memory. Not her memory, but theirs. The GPS coordinates led her to a motel on the outskirts of a town that should not exist. The paint on the walls was too bright, the parking lot too empty, the air too still. As she approached the door marked 217, she realized something. She wasn't the first to arrive. She could feel the echoes. People who had come before left traces of themselves behind, perhaps trapped and erased. She knocked. No answer. The door creaked open at her touch. Inside, the room smelled of ozone and old carpet. The bed was neatly made, except for a single item. A notebook, open, pages filled with frantic handwriting in multiple styles. Names, dates, coordinates, symbols she didn't understand. Then movement, a chair scraping. A man rose from the corner, tall, thin, eyes unnervingly bright. "You're awake," he said. She froze. "You're Jonah?" He shook his head. "Not Jonah, not exactly. He was here, but like you, I've been patched together, stitched from memory fragments. My real body doesn't exist anymore." Elise's stomach dropped. "Then why am I here?" He smiled, faint, bitter. "Because the network is waking. Every pulse we catch, every memory that leaks, the simulation adapts. And we," he gestured to himself in the notebook, "are the first to remember enough to fight back." Elise's blanket twitched, a subtle vibration against her leg. He glanced at it. "It's resonating. That's how the network finds us, tracks us. Not all of it is hostile yet, but some of it is." "Some of it?" she asked. "The replicas." "Copies," he said. "They study us. They walk like the ones they replace, smile like the ones they imitate. And they don't sleep. They don't forget. Their job is to erase the originals before we can remember fully." Elise shivered. "So Matt? He's one of them." He nodded. "I'm sorry, but yes, and the longer you stay in one place, the more they converge. The network isn't random anymore. It's anticipating you." Elise looked down at the blanket. The fabric was quivering now, almost with intent. She realized it wasn't just a transmitter. It was a lure, a key, a compass, a trap. Her pulse synchronized with its rhythm. She could hear other voices, whispers threaded through the static in her mind. Others who were awake, trying to communicate. A city she had never been to, a forest, a lab buried underground, all points of memory leaking through the simulation. She clenched her fists. "Then we fight." The man, or what called itself him, smiled again, sharper this time. "Yes, but first, we have to find the intersections." Elise swallowed hard. "And if we can't? Then the network wins and every world, every version of yourself disappears." The blanket pulsed one final time, sending a shock through the room, a warning. Outside, the sky rippled like liquid glass. Red dots blinking in the distance, hovering, watching, waiting. Elise stepped toward the notebook. "Show me." And with that, the first true map of the awakening was drawn. A network of memory, of resistance, and of the creeping, omnipresent force that would stop at nothing to erase anyone who remembered. Chapter 5, The Rememberers. The notebook spread across the motel table like a star map of impossibility. Names, symbols, dates, coordinates that shifted every time she looked away, rewriting themselves as if the book knew she was watching. Jonah, or whatever he really was, leaned over her shoulder, pointing at one cluster of entries. "These are the rememberers we've located so far, people who have fragmented memories of their original lives, enough to notice inconsistencies in the simulation, enough to resist." Elise frowned. "And the rest, are they gone?" He shook his head. "Erased, replaced. Their consciousness either absorbed or quarantined. Most don't even realize they've been removed from reality entirely. The network rewrites them in real time." She swallowed hard. Her hands trembled as she touched the notebook, tracing lines that pulsed faintly under her fingertips. It was like touching electricity, like touching the edges of something alive. "So, there are more of us?" "Yes," Jonah said, "but they're scattered, disconnected. Most don't even realize they're awake yet. And every time one of us makes a mistake, the replicas get stronger, more accurate. They've learned to anticipate us." The blanket pulsed on the chair beside her. Elise flinched, feeling it as both a warning and a lure. She realized the pulses weren't random. They were signals, marking her, marking the notebook, marking her awareness as dangerous. "Then we need a signal," she said, suddenly firm. "Something the others can recognize. If there are more rememberers out there, they need to know we exist before the network finds them first. Jonah nodded, lips tight. We have something, but it's risky. Every time we reach out, the replicas learn. The network strengthens. We've already lost people we could have saved. And the longer we wait... Elise clenched her fists. Then we don't wait. Show me. He flipped to a page in the notebook, revealing a series of geometric patterns that pulsed faintly, like constellations in motion. These are the anchors, points where reality is thinner, where memories leak into the network. If we can synchronize across several of them, we can broadcast a pulse strong enough to reach other rememberers, but what? Every time we do this, the network will know exactly where we are. The replicas will converge. They'll come in numbers and they won't hesitate. If we survive, we'll wake others. If we fail, his voice dropped. We'll be replaced, and the network will erase even the memory that we existed. Elise's stomach dropped. Then we can't fail. Outside, the sky began to ripple again. Red dots blinking in impossible formations, rotating and shifting, waiting for her next move. She felt them inside her mind now, pressing at the edges of her consciousness. Curious, probing. The first time she had touched the blanket, she had been pulled into nothing. Now, it pulsed in her lap like a heartbeat. She realized something terrifying. It had learned from her, adapted to her will. She could use it, not just as a lure, but as a beacon, a weapon. Jonah placed a hand on hers. Are you ready? She nodded. I'm ready to remember everything. He handed her a small crystalline device, a key, a transmitter, a trap wrapped in light. This will anchor us to the network. You hold it. Focus on the memories you want to send. The people who are awake, they will feel it. Elise gripped it, feeling a surge of energy pass through her. Pulses, like tiny earthquakes of thought, rippled outward. She imagined the faces of the others, fragmented echoes of consciousness waiting to wake. And then the room shook. Not just physically, the air itself warped. The motel walls flickered, dissolving into fragments of impossible geometry. The red dots outside coalesced into a pattern, a signal responding to hers. The network had noticed, and somewhere on the edge of multiple realities, someone else opened their eyes. Somewhere else, a pulse returned. Elise realized with a jolt. She wasn't alone, not anymore, and for the first time, she smiled. Because now the fight had truly begun. Chapter 6. The broadcast. The motel room had become a war zone of the mind. The walls stretched and shifted in impossible angles, pulsing faintly with red light from the blinking dots outside. Elise clutched the crystalline device, feeling it hum like a heartbeat in her palm. Jonah's eyes were sharp, scanning the edges of the room as if he could see the network itself. Remember, he said, voice low but urgent, we anchor the signal to the memories. Not the body, not the room, not even the place you were taken from. The memories themselves are the keys. You feel them, you transmit them, and the others will respond. But if you falter... His gaze hardened. The replicas will converge on us. Elise nodded. Her mind raced, fragments of her stolen nights flickering through her, the porch, the blanket, the voices layered over her consciousness, the countless versions of Matt that had tried to convince her to forget. Each fragment burned with urgency, each a thread in a tapestry she was trying desperately to weave back together. She pressed the device to her forehead. The crystal flared, casting jagged shadows across the warped walls. She inhaled, centering herself, and let the memories flow. First the porch, the light, the red dots, the white that consumed her. Then the blanket, pulsing, tethering her across time. Then Matt, no, the replica, and the terror of being replaced, erased. Outside, the red lights blinked faster, synchronizing to her heartbeat, to her pulse of memory. She could feel the network resisting, stretching invisible arms to pull the device from her grip, to snatch her consciousness back into nothing. Jonah murmured, guiding her. Anchor to the others. Think of them. Feel them waiting. And then she felt it. A tug, not of force, but of recognition. Someone else was remembering. A presence, faint, flickering, but undeniably there. Another mind reaching toward hers across the void, fragmented but alive. The crystal flared brighter. The motel walls cracked, revealing glimpses of other worlds, other realities where fragments of people she didn't know blinked awake. Faces appeared in flashes. A man with eyes too wide, a woman muttering numbers that weren't hers, a child staring into the distance as if hearing voices from beyond. Each one a rememberer, each one a thread in the network. The room convulsed violently. The replicas had noticed. Shadows coalesced in the corners. forming shapes that moved wrong, too symmetrical, too smooth, limbs bending at impossible angles. The air thickened, pressing against her lungs as the network tried to erase the broadcast, to snuff out the rememberers before the signal could spread. "Elise!" Jonah shouted. "Hold it! Focus on them, not on fear!" She gritted her teeth, pushing the fear down, letting memory and will flow outward in a pulse that rattled the air and warped the walls. The red lights outside shattered into thousands of points, streaking across the sky like a signal fire in a storm of stars. A response came. Faint at first, a pulse of thought, an echo in her mind that wasn't hers. And then another and another. Someone, or multiple people, were waking up, noticing the cracks in their world, remembering that they had been stolen, replaced, hidden. The replicas screeched, a chorus of mechanical voices layered with human ones, and lunged, shapes bending, faces twisting, trying to overwhelm them. Elise felt her consciousness tugged, pulled toward nothingness, but she didn't falter. The rememberers were out there now. The network had lost the first battle. Jonah gripped her arm. "It's working! They're seeing us! They're awake!" The motel room stabilized, the walls flickering but holding, as pulses of light raced through every surface. Outside, the night sky hummed with the resonance of countless minds remembering. The network would retaliate, but for the first time, the balance had shifted. Elise lowered the device, breath ragged. "We did it," she whispered. "We woke them." Jonah's eyes were wary. "Yes, but this is only the beginning. They'll come, they'll adapt, and next time—" He paused, voice heavy. "Next time, they won't just test us, they'll hunt us." Elise nodded, staring at the sky, the lights now scattered and chaotic like a storm of broken stars. Somewhere, out there, other rememberers were taking their first breaths of awareness. And somewhere else, the network was recalculating, rewriting, preparing. The fight wasn't over. Chapter 7, The Others. Elise's head throbbed as she stumbled through the cracked motel corridor. The night outside had shifted into something unrecognizable, streets looping back on themselves, neon signs flickering with messages in languages she didn't know but somehow understood. She was tired, but adrenaline kept her moving. Every step felt like walking through molasses, yet she sensed the pull of others, like magnets on a hidden network. Jonah followed, keeping close. "They're all around us," he whispered, eyes scanning the warped horizon. Every world, every reality, they've begun to remember, but they're scattered, disoriented, afraid, and the replicas... His voice trailed off as a shadow flickered at the edge of his vision, bending in ways human bodies shouldn't. Elise clenched the crystalline device. She could feel it pulsing, alive, like a heartbeat connecting her to those still waking. She focused, reaching out across the network with thought, memory, and will. A pulse, someone was there. A boy, maybe 15, in a hospital room that wasn't a hospital, staring at a ceiling that shouldn't exist. He flinched as he recognized a pattern in the walls, a sequence repeating in impossible loops. She reached him. "It's okay. You're remembering. You're not alone." He blinked, eyes wide. I saw it last night. The red lights, the white, something touched me." "Yes," Elise whispered. "We've all been touched, but it's not too late." Another pulse hit her, this time from a woman, mid-30s, sitting in a train that never moved forward, flickering in and out of stations. She stared at Elise's image, projected in her mind like a reflection in broken glass. Who are you?" "Rememberers," Elise said. "That's all we are, and together we can stop it." Jonah guided her. "We need a hub, a place anchored in memory strong enough to resist the network, a nexus where the others can converge." Elise's thoughts raced. She remembered the porch, the blanket, the night she'd been pulled through impossibilities. "The porch," she said. "The light, it's stable. The place I first remembered. If we can anchor it there..." Jonah nodded. "Yes, but it'll be a beacon. They'll come for us." Outside, the air quivered. Shadows twisted into faces she recognized, replicas of people she knew, distorted and wrong. They moved with purpose, silent yet menacing, tracking her pulse of awareness. Elise's heart pounded, but she steadied herself. This was the first time the rememberers had taken control, and control was power. She closed her eyes and projected herself into the network again, letting the memories flow. Faces, moments, places she had experienced, or thought she had, flickered like fireflies across her mind. One by one, the scattered rememberers responded. Their minds brushed hers, reaching across impossible distances, connecting. Each pulse made the network flinch, made the replicas hesitate. Somewhere, a child screamed, pure, terrified, human. But Elise felt the child's essence thread into the signal. She anchored it. Another pulse joined, and another. Soon hundreds, maybe thousands, were reaching out, tethering themselves to her and each other. "Too many," Jonah whispered. "They'll know. Then the first strike came. A wave of static and distortion slammed into her consciousness, tearing through the connection. Elise fell to her knees, gasping as the motel walls warped and twisted violently. Shadows of replicas surged from the corners, and she could hear the distorted chorus of voices layered over one another. "You cannot escape. You do not exist. You are already gone." But she didn't falter. She screamed the memories into the void. "Remember!" The word pulsed through her, a shockwave of raw human awareness. Faces in the shadows faltered. One by one, cracks appeared in the replica's forms, fissures that revealed nothingness beneath the wrong shapes. The rememberers pushed back. Consciousness met machine, mind against code, reality against impossibility. The motel quaked as layers of worlds collided, fragments of realities folding over one another. Elise gritted her teeth, eyes fixed on the pulse of the device, guiding the awakening. And then, silence. The motel stabilized. Outside, the night was still and empty. The red lights in the sky blinked once, then vanished. Elise exhaled, shivering as she realized the network had retreated. For now, Jonah helped her to her feet. "They're regrouping," he said. "This was only a skirmish. The war has just begun." Elise nodded, feeling the pulse of others around her, rememberers scattered across realities, awake, aware, and fighting back. Somewhere far beyond the motel, the blanket waited, shimmering softly. It would return, and when it did, so would the network. But this time, they would be ready. For the first time, Elise felt the weight of hope. Chapter 8, Signals and Echoes. Elise awoke in a safe house, a forgotten warehouse converted by the rememberers. The walls were lined with screens showing static, pulses of reality, and fleeting images of those still trapped in loops. Each screen was a window, a call, a possibility. Jonah handed her a headset. "It's time to synchronize," he said. "We need every rememberer we can reach to anchor themselves. We create a pulse strong enough to fracture their control." As Elise activated the device, her mind stretched across dimensions. She saw fragments of herself in other realities, flickering, uncertain. They reached for her, and she for them. Slowly, the pulses began to form a rhythm, a heartbeat stronger than any simulation code. But then she saw him, or it, Matt, or what had been Matt. His face twisted with recognition, but it wasn't human anymore. "You're too late," it whispered in every voice she knew, layered into one. "This world will reset, you will return to nothing." Elise didn't flinch. "No," she thought, "we remember, we exist, and we are many." Chapter 9, Breaches. The next step was dangerous. The rememberers began appearing in places they shouldn't, schools, streets, hospitals, and offices across multiple realities. Each appearance tore the fabric of the simulations, leaving cracks that allowed glimpses of the real universe outside. Elise moved among them, connecting minds, sharing memories, reinforcing identities. Children who had glimpsed the lights now remembered playgrounds, parents, first words. Adults recalled conversations, faces, lives that had been erased. But the replicas struck back. Shadows of the false Matt and other constructs began infiltrating these breaches, attempting to sow confusion. Elise felt one brush against her mind, a cold pressure trying to overwrite her memories. Pain shot through her skull, but she pushed back with everything she had. Jonah shouted from behind her. "They're adapting, faster than we thought. The more people remember, the stronger the network becomes, and the harder they'll fight to maintain control." Elise's eyes burned with determination. "Then we'll fight harder." Chapter 10, Nexus. Elise and the rememberers converged on the porch, the original anchor point. The white light, once terrifying, now pulsed with familiarity. Here the network's reach was strongest, but so was their chance. The rememberers formed a circle around the porch. Elise stood in the center, the crystalline device humming in sync with her heartbeat. Faces of those who had touched the edges of reality flickered around her, connected by threads of awareness. The replicas appeared, countless, their forms shifting unnaturally. They moved as one, a swarm of wrongness, pressing in from all sides. The light from the porch flared, burning, and Elise projected every memory she could into it. Birthdays, first loves, failures, joys, heartbreaks. Every moment humans had ever lived, every thread of identity poured into the Nexus. The replicas screamed, not in sound, but in vibration, as their code strained against the raw force of remembered existence. Elise felt the device vibrate violently in her hands. We are not nothing. We are everything they cannot erase. A singular, monstrous form emerged, the false Matt. He lunged toward Elise, distorted, broken, a composite of all the simulation's control mechanisms. "Leave her alone," a chorus of voices shouted. Every rememberer, unified, projected their essence against him. And then, light. Chapter 11, Awakening. The white light enveloped everything. Elise's mind expanded, touching all the fractured realities, all the rememberers, all the echoes of human consciousness. Time folded, space cracked, and in that infinitesimal moment, a singular truth crystallized. They existed, and their existence was unbreakable. The false Matt shrieked, a noise of impossible layers, and dissolved into shards of broken code. The replicas faltered, glitching, and the network that had tried to control humanity for untold simulations began to collapse. When the light faded, Elise was standing on the porch. The morning was real, or as real as it could be. The blanket lay folded neatly at her feet, a reminder of everything they had survived. Around her, the other rememberers emerged, blinking, human, alive, aware. Jonah stepped beside her. "It's done, for now, but this isn't over. There will be more attempts, other simulations, other resets." Elise looked out at the horizon, feeling the pulse of memory everywhere. "Then we'll be ready. We'll remember, always." And for the first time in countless cycles, the world felt like it belonged to them. The end. For now.